Do it. Good afternoon, folks. We are here for the zoning docket for Tuesday, January 29th, 2019. If you're here for a zoning issue. We're going to have a couple of announcements to make by our Executive Director, Derek Baumgartner, regarding some issues regarding the number of board members we have present today, as well as we're all watching the weather, so we're mindful of that. Things go south. We're keeping that in mind, but it's a good time.
Sure. There are two announcements today. The first is, as you all can see, we have 3 board members present. 3 board members is a quorum. However, in order to be approved, you would need a unanimous vote and approval for your application. So you would need 3 yes votes. Ordinarily, when there are 5 members present, you need 4 yes votes. When there are 4 members present, you need 3 yes votes. Thereby extension, when we only have 3 board members, you would need all 3 votes in the affirmative. Standard practice when this occurs is that you would have the right to postpone your case if you would rather wait for another 2 weeks or another 4 weeks so you had more board members. If there is a case with opposition, we typically request that both sides agree to hear a case with only 3 board members. If the opposition or if the appellant does not wish to move forward, it's sort of like an automatic postponement. The second issue is the weather. As the chairman had mentioned, we're all watching the weather. Apparently the city announced liberal leave for all non-essential employees at 1 o'clock, so 24 minutes ago. The city is still open, but we're gonna kind of get up and watch the weather and see what's falling from the sky, and if we need to, we will have to cancel the hearings. Everyone's safety is more important than a zoning appeal, so we'll make that recommendation as we go on through the afternoon. Those are the only 2 announcements. Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Very well. Forgive me for reading a script, because some of us got to start somewhere. So just a few preliminary items, and those of you who have been here in the past, you kind of know what they are. Initially, we want you to turn off all your cell phones, turn it to vibrate mode or silent. If you need to have a conversation, please take it outside. Cell phones and the conversations, of course, are disruptive to the proceedings, but also everything is being recorded here. You are, we are, and so we don't want that to hinder the recording of the matters. There are a couple of postponements here today. Identify those, and anyone who signed in these cases will be notified of a new hearing date. The first postponement we have, I think we had 2 of them, is appeal number 2018-434, 2639 Loyola Southway. Anybody here for that matter? Okay. And you're aware that, was it your request? Okay. So that matter, and we'll give you notice of a new date when it comes up. The second matter that's being postponed is appeal number 2019-006, 2401 Aruna Avenue. Is anyone here for that matter? Okay, those matters will be postponed and notice will be given of a new date.
And Mr. Chairman, we have 2 more. It looks like we have, first is case number 2018-450, 1561 Carswell. I believe the applicant will be requesting a postponement. If the applicant can come forward at this time.
Are you Mr. Roberto Ramirez?
Yes. Okay, and again, this is case 2018-450, 1561 Carswell Street. Roberto Ramirez, you'd like a postponement today, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and Councilwoman Clark, you're here for that?
Very much, so we can see whether we can work something out with the applicant and the owner in the Chum neighborhood.
Okay, very well. Postponement is granted, and we'll give you notice in due time of a new date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then lastly, a request for postponement was handed up in 2018-457, 48 South Fulton Avenue, Shelton Carr.
Yeah, step forward, please. Again, this is case number 2018-457, 48 South Fulton Avenue. Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Okay, you're requesting a postponement today?
Yes.
Okay, and you, sir, represent the opposition?
Yes, Mr. Watson, part of the neighborhood.
Okay, and are you in agreement with the postponement
Yes,
today?
I want to see if we can try to, and Dan as well.
Hi, Danny Rodenberg, Union Square Association.
Okay, very well. Okay, so you guys will continue to talk, and we'll see you at another time once we give you a new date.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodenberg, my brother James here.
Gotcha. All right. Moving on. Just to give you a sense of how we'll proceed today, as usual, we'll call the cases generally as they appear on the docket. And when we call your case, the appellate will stand to my left, over here, and any opposition will stand to my right. Appellant gets the opportunity to present his or her side, and then the opposition will have an opportunity to state a response. Thereafter, the appellant, just like in court, gets the last word. They'll have the opportunity to address any comments of the opposition, and that will end the hearing. We will vote on the appeals heard today at the end of the docket. Anyone who wishes to stay, to hear that may do so. Otherwise, you can call the office tomorrow and get the decision of the board. That phone number, I'll say it twice, is 410-396-4301. Again, that's 410-396-4301. Of course, we ask that you not build in Baltimore without proper permits. The written decision will be issued in approximately 3 weeks or so. And there we have those. We do have some cases on consent, but I'll go forward and again talk about the ones that have opposition. Apparently some cases have signed in and some folks have signed in for opposition. It's been the experience of the board, certainly prior to me and even since I've been here, that a discussion between the parties can help things get resolved. In fact, we see some people already today who've indicated they've been talking and are working towards that. We want to give you that opportunity today to continue to have dialogue, and we would encourage that. So we have identified on the docket today opposition. First one I'm seeing is
2019-5.
oh, yeah, way back there. Case number, the appeal number 2019-5, 1401 Light Street, Lee Giroux. Oh, they're in the lobby talking. There you go. Having discussion, that's good. That's,
457 was already postponed.
okay. All right, very good. So that was taken care of. All right. All right, so since I'm no longer talking to anyone who has opposition out here, next we're going to call the cases for which the board has sufficient information in the file to approve your case. Those are what we call our consent docket. I'll call all the cases and ask that everyone line up who are representing those cases to my left, and then we'll call your case, and then you can come to the mic, and then we'll begin that consent docket. And those cases are appeal number 2018-439, 1420 Light Street, Elisa Hertzmark. We also have case number 2018-444, 201 to 203 South Eaton Street, Keith Kaiser. We also have appeal number 2018-449, 1828 South Charles Street, Julia Miller. We next have case number 2018-453, 3227 Shelburne Road, Robert Butler. And I think that's it for the consents. So when you come to the mic, we'll call your case number, state the name for the record.
Let me swear them in real quick.
Oh, that'd be great.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
First case, 2018-439, 1420 Light Street. It's Hertzmark, and we have this as a request to subdivide lot, front building as 5 dwelling units and rear building as single-family dwelling. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great. Any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. The applicant is proposing subdivision of a property which requires approval by the Planning Commission. Therefore, the Department of Planning is recommending approval of this appeal, subject to the provision or condition that all improvements and other work are completed in accordance with the subdivision plan and the development plan approved by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Are those conditions acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add to the record?
Not at this time.
All right. Well, the board, having reviewed your case, has sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Very much. Next case, 2018-444, 201 through 203 South Eaton Street. We have Keith Kaiser, but you are Mr. Prettle. Okay, and this is a request to use the first floor as an office. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Do we have any staff reports for this one, Mr. French?
Yes. First, we have a letter from the Highlandtown Community Association. They indicate support of the request, but they ask that some conditions be placed on the approval. That the applicant will maintain clean exterior of the property. They will maintain proper trash management for the residents and rental tenants. They will install sufficient lighting on both South Eaton Street, East Pratt Street frontages, and in the alley behind the property. The lighting will be activated during all night hours. They will install security cameras with coverage in these same areas, and they will register these cameras with the Baltimore City Watch Community Watch Camera Registry. Does planning have a report?
Planning Department has reviewed this application and recommends approval. Thank you.
Mr. Prettle, having heard those conditions, are they acceptable to
They
you?
are.
Is there anything you'd like to add for the record?
Just as staff mentioned, we met with the Highlandtown Community Association several times and have a letter of support, and we're amenable to those conditions.
Very well. Well, the board, having reviewed your case, has sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next case we have is 2018-449, 1828 South Charles Street. Julia Miller?
Yes.
Okay. We have this as a request to construct 2-story rear addition and a new 3rd floor with a rooftop deck. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And do we have any staff reports for this matter?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. That's it? All right. Is there anything you'd like to add to your appeal and your, anything else for the record?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Well, the board, having reviewed your case, has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you. Finally, we have 2018-453, 3227 Shelburne Road. Mr. Butler?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is a request to construct a 1-story side addition, correct?
Yes.
And do we have any staff reports for this matter?
Planning Department has reviewed this application, has no comment. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Butler, is there anything else you'd like to add to the record?
I just wanted to say that I spoke to the neighbors.
Yes, sir.
There seems to be no opposition. Everybody's in favor of it. We're only going out another 6 feet, so that still leaves the setback now, or the space between the house and the property line is about 12 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it still leaves plenty of room for walking, and so it wouldn't shouldn't affect the neighbors because that's plenty of room to get from the front to the back, and I guess also I could like to add that I'm doing the work for the people, so I'm speaking on behalf of the people. However, they've voiced concern with the fact that they have a very large family. The kitchen, we just finished some work there, and you literally have to walk like this, to get from the front part of the house to the back. So, the need is definitely there. I think they have like 8 kids. They're religious people, in Pikesville. It's their hopes that on Shabbos, Saturdays, that they all get together and they have their family meal. but it's, you know, increasingly more difficult when you're trying to not only, you know, sit 10 to 11 people at a table. In addition to that, they also have to observe, you know, kosher, their kosher meals. There has to be a meat and a dairy, and there just is no room, you know, to put that in the existing kitchen. So just wanted to add that.
Understood. Well, thank you for that additional information. And you're happy to hear, I'm sure, that the board, having reviewed your case, has sufficient information to approve your appeal. So thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is that it?
And Mr. Chairman, we have another request for a postponement in case 2019-05.
Okay. Anyone for that matter? 1401 Light Street, come forward. Ms. Giroux?
Yes, good afternoon.
Okay, let me just call it properly again. 2019-5, 1401 Light Street, Lee Giroux, and this is to use a portion of premises as accessory community center.
It's actually been amended. It's an office with accessory use as a community center. We apologize. We did put an amendment in, but I think it was rather late.
Okay.
So
Office
the
as
primary
accessory.
is office, and then community center will be
That
accessory
was one of the
use.
salient questions that we had. What was accessory to? So it's accessory to an office, but you're requesting a postponement today?
Yes, please.
Okay. And there was no opposition here today?
Yes, there is.
There is?
They're outside in the hallway.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll need to hear from, it can...
So we're having discussion with them right now.
Okay.
But we also have some people, because the weather didn't come, that were supposed to be here as well. So I'm just
All right, well,
deciding.
is there anyone from the opposition that could just come in?
Yes,
and
absolutely. Okay.
communicate that they're fine with the opposition, just for the record? I'm sorry, the postponement. Yeah, they're fine with the opposition.
Start sharing.
Postponement. If I can read what my page looks like. Should have just accepted.
Bring him back alive, Derek. Request. The three commissioners.
Wish everybody.
You're doing a nice job.
Thanks, dear.
Oh yeah, I'll send me an email and I'll connect you with Amy, but when she literally walked me through the whole thing. Where's your office?
Gallery office
Okay, yeah, easy walk.
Gotcha. All right, again, calling again the case of, which were we? Which one do we have? 05? 2019-5, 1401 Light Street. Again, to use portion of premises as office with accessory, an accessory community center. All right, Ms. Giroux, you're requesting a postponement?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And you're here representing the opposition, ma'am?
Yes, I'm here with the Federal Hill South Neighborhood Association.
Your name?
My name is Cynthia Spearman.
Okay. Are you in agreement with the request for postponement today?
We would not want to postpone. We took days off from our jobs to come here, so we really would like to have this hearing occur.
Okay. Well, what is the basis for the request for postponement today, ma'am?
Well, obviously, there's 3 board members here. That's one thing. And we also don't have the owner of the building with us. She wasn't willing to travel with this weather. So, and we are starting to obviously discuss some of the things that have not been discussed between owner and the community and the neighbors. And I think they can come to some kind of terms with some of the compromises that they've already discussed for the past half an hour. So I would like an opportunity for them to sit down and reasonably go through what their concerns are and what miscommunication there has been, obviously, between these parties.
Okay. Is this, I don't see a record on here. Has this been the subject of a prior postponement before?
It is not.
Okay. I think we announced earlier when we started today that given the issue of a three-member board and the requirement that a ruling be unanimous as to the all three, that we would entertain postponements if both sides would agree to such.
That's correct.
Here, obviously we don't have that part. I know the weather is, of concern to folks. Where's the owner traveling from, if you don't mind?
The other person is from up north. I actually traveled 200 miles to come in here today myself, but the other person is considerably older than me and also said she wasn't going to take the chance in coming down here.
Okay, but she was okay with you going forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Or postpone. She said either way, whatever. She figured it was going to be called off anyway because of the weather. So I guess because the schools are starting to close, she wasn't going to get in her car and come down. So.
Just give me a moment, if you would.
Okay.
Having heard the appellant's request for a postponement and the circumstances surrounding that, as well as the status of the three-member board, and there having been no other postponements to date, we are going to grant the request for postponement today. We will give you notice, due notice of the new date, and we'll take it up at that point.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's 14. Okay, I think we can turn to our regular docket at this point, which is a much smaller docket. First case we're going to call is appeal number 2017-237, 3600 Clipper Mill Road, Nate Prettle, to replace 65-foot high double-faced general advertising sign with 75-foot high V-shaped digital digital screen general advertising sign. Now we swear them right side?
Yeah.
Swear these folks now?
Yeah.
Just raise your right hand to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that
is
you're
Ken
about to
coming?
give?
Yeah, I thought he was coming up.
He's talking.
Like to swear a minute.
Sorry.
Swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Please state your name for the record.
Yes. Alfred W. Barry, AB Associates, here on behalf of the owner, represented by Samuel Himmerich. And we have Roger Brown, who's a representative of Daktronics, traveled from South Dakota to find someplace warm in the East Coast
Good luck with that.
and escape the weather.
Very well. And again, we have this to replace 65-foot high double-faced general advertising sign with 75-foot high V-shaped digital screen general advertising sign. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, we have a letter that was part of the initial appeal, came in on July 5th. There is no indication of a change of opinion. They write, as a resident of Woodbury since 1986 and a Brisk Hill resident since 1992, I request to postpone the hearing about the billboards that will be facing Brick Hill and Woodbury. I'm asking that you delay the hearing scheduled for Tuesday, July 18th, while we continue a dialogue with the developer and landlord, Sam Himmelrich. I do not support what appears to be an approximate 40-degree positioning of what is currently the Brick Hill facing side of the billboard.
When was that dated?
Wednesday, July 5th, 2017.
Okay,
So-
I will add that this was postponed from July 18, 2017 originally.
And I would simply add that the original appeal was filed on June 1st of 2017, which was 4 days before the enactment of Transform Baltimore, which is the new zoning code. So the board is operating under the prior zoning code that was in the effect at the time that the application was filed.
Very well. Mr. French?
Okay. Planning Department reviewed this application, and I'd like to read from the record the memo which the Planning Department submitted on July 14th of 2017. The board must find as conditions of approval that the sign conforms to its original approvals as granted by the board, that neither the height nor the size of the sign may be increased, and the sign may not be relocated more than 10 feet from its approved location. In general, if a sign has 2 or more faces, the area of all faces is included in determining the area of the sign, except as specified in subsection B of this section. Subsection B, back to back within 2 feet. If 2 faces are placed back to back and are not more than 2 feet apart, excluding necessary supports or uprights, the area of the sign is taken as 1, the area of one face, if the 2 faces are of equal area, and 2, the area of the larger face, if the 2 faces are of unequal area. These requirements are identical to those in the current code as well. The existing sign is a double-faced general advertising sign or billboard with parallel sign faces approximately 48 feet wide by 14 feet high, or 672 square feet per sign face. For the total sign area to be considered to be 672 square feet, by using that statement above, if 2 faces are placed back to back and are nowhere more than 2 feet from one another, excluding necessary supports or uprights, the area of the sign is taken as the area of one face. The proposed V-shaped sign structure, using the existing 4-foot 7-inch diameter monopole as its support structure, would have a minimum sign face separation of 4 feet 8 inches, flare to a separation of approximately 14 feet apart near the center, near the elevated sign structure's juncture with the monopole, and further flare the separation to approximately 20 feet at the maximum separation point at the open end of the V shape. This would cause the sign face area to double from 672 square feet to 1,344 square feet, which would violate the provision of Section 11-506B of the former zoning code cited above, which is that the size of the sign may not be increased. Alternatively, it would also violate the provisions of Section 17-304, which has since been replaced, and Section 18-504 of the replacement zoning code that became effective June 5th of 2017. For this reason, the portion of this application requesting a V-shaped replacement sign structure must be disapproved. The Department of Planning recommends disapproval of the portion of this application relating to replacement of the existing double-faced general advertising sign with a V-shaped general advertising or billboard sign, because the proposed V-shaped design, having a 44-degree angle between sign faces, according to the plan filed with the application, would enable a doubling of sign area of a non-conforming sign, which is prohibited by both the earlier zoning code and the replacement zoning code. The Department of Planning recommends approval of the portion of this appeal relating to replacement of the existing sign faces with LED faces, only with the following conditions if the applicant proceeds with its application under all other terms and conditions of the zoning code. 1, that the entire face of the existing billboard or general advertising sign is approved for alteration to a digital screen, and that this alteration may be installed in incremental steps at the appellant's option without the need for further land use approval, so long as the billboard adheres to the operational limits or other conditions that may be imposed by the board. 2nd, that the performance of the digital screen billboard conforms to all the requirements of Section 11-502 of the zoning code in effect when the application was filed, by having a minimum dwell time of 10 seconds, that it will not increase the area of the existing billboard, that it will not increase the degree of illumination, and that it will not have any flashing, blinking, fluctuating, or otherwise animated light. 3rd, that the digital screen billboard will not have animations, movie clips, and/or sound elements. 4th, that the digital screen will default to black entirely in the event of failure of the remote control system or an interruption of advertising copy, meaning text, images, or both. And finally, that the digital sign will have automatic brightness controls so that the sign will not constitute a hazard to passing motorists at night or during inclement weather. That's our report. Thank you.
Could you repeat that, please?
I will hand you this written copy. You can read from it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Berry, having heard all that, what say you? Where are we?
Well, as Mr. Baumgartner pointed out, this is an unusual case, maybe the last case that the board hears that concerns the old zoning code. As was pointed out, Transform Baltimore went into effect in June 5th of 2017, and there was a prior approval for the same sign going back to 2015. I want to go into the history of what happened between 2015 and June 1st, 2017, when we filed specifically to operate under the old zoning code provisions. As was sort of maybe highlighted in that letter or email from the community member, when the original proposal came in to replace an existing billboard at Clipper Mill, which Mr. Himmelrich owns, it was a contested case. None of the current board members were there, but it was, I'll say, opposed at the time by Clear Channel. And that was a rather protracted hearing that went back and forth and was participated in by the Housing Department, but the board ultimately approved the replacement of the existing billboard with what became a single-faced billboard, primarily because of the community opposition, and we agreed to take away the double face and negotiate with them over how several issues that you're going to hear about. One of them had to do with the angle of the new billboard face that's before you today, as well as the lighting impact that the neighborhood was concerned about. So from 2015, when it was approved, to 2017, there was a lot of, I won't say back and forth with the neighborhood, but there was a lot of consideration as to how to go back to the neighborhood. Frankly, Transform Baltimore's adoption caused us to then reapply, restart the neighborhood. I want to hand out for the board a chronology, which is of the interaction with the Woodbury Association, the source of that original letter. And that chronology really details, and there's some emails that are accompany it, particularly an email at the beginning, which concludes that the work of Daktronics and the work of the angle has been successful in getting the neighborhood to not oppose this request before you today. And we have a member of Daktronics here who's going to testify as to the lighting impact study that they actually did. And so I would ask that the board consider that. Sorry for the delay, but we are under the old zoning code. And with respect to planning's recommendation, they have consistently misinterpreted this section of the code dealing with how you calculate size of signs. Two signs in particular which are relevant, I'll just point out. The first is a sign that was approved in 2011 directly across the street at the Union Mill property, which was a V-shaped billboard that was approved by the board in 2011. And a subsequent case that you're going to hear next to this, although it's for a different sign, Mr. Himmelrich also owns a property on Western Avenue. And the board in 2000, again, under the old code, filed under, before Transform, a request to change a double-faced sign to a V-shaped sign. And the board approved that. There was a request by the board of documenting that the existing sign faces were no more than 2 feet apart. We had a land surveyor send the board a letter as part of the file, and it's actually 5.5 feet for the sake of argument. So planning's interpretation that the size is counted the way they interpret it has been before the board many times, maybe none of your members, and the board has approved these V-shaped billboards as opposed to what planning would recommend. So I'd ask you to disregard their testimony or their recommendation on this and accept the notion that the only reason that we're actually making the angle, and we'll get into this with Daktronics, is it directly at request of the neighborhood association. They did not want the angle of the sign potentially facing some of their homes on Brick Hill. And so it took us a while to get to that point. We're here today. You have an email from Sherry Higgins at the front of your chronology that talks about that.
Let me ask you, with regard to the, I understand what you're saying, planning's calculation of the size of the sign, you're saying that what has previously been approved by the board is the same size of the
In other words, yes, we are not increasing the size of the sign because there's no other way to interpret the existing size of the billboard because it's over 2 feet apart. So each sign is calculated separately. Because of that, we have permit drawings, which we'll introduce to the board, that were approved by the city that verifies that this is over 5 feet distance separating it. So they're counted as 2 separate signs, and therefore we're not increasing the size of the sign. We're not increasing the location. We're not increasing, the height over what was previously approved.
Was an MOU ever entered into with the community or the?
The neighborhood association?
Yeah, the neighborhood association.
There was not an MOU. I'll let, Mr. Rice hasn't been sworn in, or Mr. Himmelrich might be able to comment on that.
We can swear him.
He'll need to be.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? What was your name?
Kenneth Rice, R-I-C-E.
Step up to the microphone.
Sure. As you can see from the chronology, there were lots and lots of meetings and emails and phone calls with a community group. And at one point, very early on, they had suggested maybe we should do an MOU. I think that was very early in 2017. At the end, through our meetings and through the reports from Daktronics, they really were focused on the different angles of the billboard, and actually they wanted a light study amended to show what the light impact would be at the first level of a house and at the second level of the house. The original studies came out and said, well, if you were 5 feet off the ground, this is what the light impact would be. So through all of that, they indicated to us that they were satisfied with the studies and didn't request an MOU.
Thank you.
If it pleases the board, I'd like to have Roger Brown from Daktronics, who's a person from South Dakota, maybe give you a summary of what they did and how they studied it and what the impact is essentially negligible.
Very well.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Brown. I work for a company called Daktronics, which is the world's largest manufacturer of electronic signs. I was hired on there about 12 years ago to build, and I now manage the signage legislation department of the company. And it's to help, my main role is to help governments adopt appropriate regulations for the new technologies for what these electronic signs can do, as well as we're here today, work with our customers to help them get through the permitting process so that they can buy and install our signs.
Okay. Let me just ask you, have you, in connection with your work, in connection with this project, had you reviewed the various code provisions?
Yes. How it's set up, you'll see on the actual graphs, I believe there are 3 of them in front of you today. They're signed by one of our application engineers. So the actual math involved to create the graphs and that sort of thing is done by someone in our engineering department. Then my department writes up the letters that explain what you see on each of the graphs. So I've been doing this now for 12 years where we kind of walk through exactly what impact the sign will have on its in the neighborhood. So the first main graph is a full 75 degrees in each direction coming off the front of the sign. And it will show exactly how much of an impact the light will have at different distances away from the sign, as well as at different angles away from the sign.
Okay, let me make sure I'm looking at what it is you're referencing.
Sure. I don't think we did. Okay. There's a full one where we have it, but apparently it was not submitted. I'll just talk about
I think we have a board.
So what I'll do is talk about these 2 that are in front of you right now. Basically, what we were asked to do was not just show the full spectrum, as I started talking about. But here it was in direct answer to the concerns that were brought about by the Woodbury community about how the sign would affect their community up on the hill there. And so what we did was take different measurements and compute exactly how much would be hitting at different elevations, because there's a huge hill there. And with the sign up high and the houses up high, they looked at different levels of how much of the light from the sign would be reaching that level. And as you can see, both of those particular computations came out to be 0 or 0.00. It's a negligible amount that isn't even registerable by normal foot candle meter readers. So that was a specific request to put together these examples of just how little it is going to be impacting the community in that particular instance. Oh, actually, yeah, this one we've seen, this one, I just wanted to show them this one. I'm sorry, I thought you had a copy of this one as well. This is the full spectrum one. So you can kind of see
Okay.
that we created, but I'm not sure
Well,
if I
that's
can show
definitely
this.
more helpful.
Yeah, that's lines in.
It's gonna show you around, but you can see all the way to the edge, it gets to 0. You know, it shows how it's a bit more right near the actual interstate, you know, directly in front of the sign. And as you go farther out or farther off center, that's where LEDs are directional lighting. And so there's not as much light coming out to the side. So, you know, if there's a height above ground level distance difference, you know, not as much shows directly below the board. It goes out in a straight line.
So the middle, the 3 is the brightest, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's helpful.
So I'm not really sure how far I should go into this. You can get down a rabbit hole on the technicalities and stuff. Are there any particular questions you have?
Well, frankly, to the extent that anything additional you have to say would speak to what planning department's concerns were, that would be most helpful.
And for the most part, we created the 2 that you have there specifically for that concern that was raised back in, I believe, 2015 or so, where they said up in Woodbury that there's a concern about how much light would be hitting it. And it's so negligible that the normal foot candle meters that are used for this type of regulation don't even register that amount. To give you an understanding, the typical standard that we operate under is that a sign can add 0.3 foot candles above ambient light level. And so that gives you basically the amount of light of 1/3 of a candle, a single candle puts out. And that's all that we can add to the ambient light level. Like your typical interstate that this sign is along puts out 1.3 foot candles. We're only 1/3 of 1 foot candle is the max amount we could be doing. And as you can see, with it being 0.00, we're not even registering on those scales for that particular community.
Okay. It's helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Barry, could you comment on the application on the old code of section 11203 computing area, your interpretation versus the planning department's interpretation of that provision?
Yes. While I do that, let me hand out copies of the building permit for the sign as well as the shop drawings.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Just take some of that.
So planning's interpretation is not new to at least prior boards, and certainly wasn't new in 2017 before Transform. Yet the board approved on 2 occasions that I've mentioned, approved V-shaped signs disregarding that interpretation. And in this case, you'll see from the permit as well as the drawings that the signs are more than 2 feet apart, approximately 5.5 feet apart. This came up in the, specifically, I'll give you your own resolution for Western Avenue. I just have 1 copy. Where this was an issue before the board under the old zoning code. And you'll look at a section of that, and the board, as I said earlier, required us to, because we didn't have permit drawings, the board required us to hire a surveyor. We went out and he sent the board a letter testifying, in a sense, that the distance separation was over the 2 feet, and therefore that interpretation of plannings would not apply. And so that was approved. And in fact, we have a permit, I believe. What? Yes.
I'm sorry, if I could just read directly from the code as well, or from the planning department's memo. It says, section 17, 11.506B, in effect through 2017 and 17-304 of the new zoning code, states that in general, if a sign has more than 2 faces, the area of all faces is included in determining the area of the sign, except as specified in subsection B of this section. Subsection B says back to back within 2 feet. If 2 faces are placed back to back and are not more than 2 feet apart, excluding necessary supports or uprights, the area of the sign is taken as the area of one face if the 2 faces are equal area, and the area of the larger face if the 2 faces are of unequal area. So I think the planning department goes on in their memo to say that they believe that the faces are back to back closer than 2 feet. And that is why they came up with their determination. But as we said, the faces are 5.5 feet apart, so the calculation would be calculation of both boards.
So at the bottom of the V, how close are they apart?
Let me explain. When you use the term the bottom of the V,
Sir, hold on.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, I don't have your name. You need to step to the microphone.
I'm Sam Himmelrich,
How do you spell it?
HIMMELRICH.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, I understand that it doesn't actually meet.
Yeah, let me-
towards the part that it's narrowest, what's?
Okay, let me explain if I may. The nature of the V, well, wait a second, Ken. The boards, and I can use my hands or something to explain this, the V is not relative to plumb. The V is relative to the orientation of the sign. So I'm going to use these 2 pieces of, it won't be.
It won't be on the record.
That's fine.
Let's go
Okay,
with
but essentially, this is a V. What currently exists are 2 faces
No,
like
I
this.
understand that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I was trying to figure out at the narrowest point, how far it would be
Okay,
apart.
I'm sorry.
Our drawing shows it's 5 feet, 3.5 inches.
For the existing sign.
No, on the proposed sign.
Doesn't have a-
On the proposed sign
At the narrowest
with the V,
port,
the narrowest point.
and then the farthest,
20 feet.
widest, 20 feet, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
But-
Thank you.
I thought
Yeah.
when you went like that, I thought.
Sorry, I was just trying to figure out.
But let me point out that the angle and the distance of the future sign has nothing to do with what planning is recommending. They're saying that because the sign is, in their mind, 2 feet or less, that that it's an increase in the size of the sign.
I understand.
That's the issue, not the V per se, other than back to whether the sign should be interpreted as 1 face or 2 faces. And I think it's clear from past boards' decisions, both in this immediate area as well as Western Avenue, that the board's position has been consistent on this, and we would ask you to approve the application before you today, taking into account the lighting testimony, the work we've done with the neighborhood, and their support.
Okay, let me ask you, with regard to this prior approval and resolution by the board,
You're reading to Western Avenue?
yeah, I'm actually looking at Western Avenue, so never mind. But the conditions, were there conditions attached to the board's prior?
Yeah, the planning has traditionally given applications like this conditions for digital signs dating with dwell times and so forth, and we have no objection to those whatsoever.
I would point the board towards the fact that each individual zoning appeal is independent of every other zoning appeal. Prior appeals certainly could be persuasive, but they're not binding precedent on this board. I'd also, that'll be, that's my addition.
We're not disagreeing with that, it's obviously with the executive director. I would say that the considerations of the board for conditional use are easily met. Most of these frankly don't apply, whether it's the nature of the site. Certainly it's opposite of interstate highway. The neighborhood behind it we've taken into account by moving the angle of the sign and reducing the light level. That speaks to the nature of the surrounding area, proximity of residential communities. Accessibility of fire and police isn't really an issue. Adequacy of utilities is an issue. It's not, there's no urban renewal plan for this area. So we meet the standards, and 11506 under the old code did say that there's no increase in height or size of the sign, which is what we're doing, and the board may approve a change in structure, which we're asking you to do today, and which you've done for similar V-shaped applications. Anything else?
Anything else? Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You must stay up here.
You can stay. Next case we will call is 2018-130, 1321 Western Avenue. Mr. Barry here for Mr. Prettle, again, to replace existing single-faced billboard with new billboard, same size, same location. This matter was postponed from May 15th, 2018, prior to that, also June 12th, 2018, and July 24th, 2018. Mr. Barry.
As I mentioned, and you have a resolution that dealt with a V-shaped billboard on the same property. There was one remaining single-face billboard on Western Avenue, which is before you today. When this sign was originally introduced for new board consideration, it came along almost simultaneously with the case on Utah Street, which was to replace a single-faced billboard with a illuminated digital billboard. The zoning board, some of you may have been on that, actually denied that request because of a provision that planning mentions in their report, but which does not apply to us anymore, in that there's a requirement for you have to remove 3 billboards for a new digital billboard.
Let me stop you there, and I apologize. I did not ask for staff reports with regard to this matter.
Correct. Yes, the Planning Department reviewed this application, which is, as Mr. Barry has stated, under the terms of the current zoning code and not the previous zoning code, unlike the previous appeal. That provision that he's referring to in the zoning code is that if a billboard is to be converted from non-digital to digital, there is a requirement that 3 existing billboard faces be removed prior to the conversion of the billboard approved for conversion to digital. This particular application contained no information concerning billboard faces that would be removed in other locations or elsewhere in order to allow the board to approve the conversion to digital. The department therefore recommended disapproval of the application unless the applicant first provides documentation of at least 3 existing billboard faces that have been or would be removed if the proposed digital billboard is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
So
that in mind, Mr.
with that, the
Just want to state the witnesses have been previously sworn in the last case.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that in mind, the original approval to replace this existing billboard with a digital billboard, I think we may have been scheduled the same day as the Utah Street billboard. We decided to postpone that application, put it on hold pending the legal resolution of an appeal to City Circuit Court. So the Utah Street, I know it's not before you, the Utah Street billboard has in fact been appealed to Circuit Court, and as far as I know, it's not been scheduled. They're still submitting briefs on that. But because of that litigation, and they could come back to the board, they could reverse your decision, they could remand it for more testimony, or they could uphold it. So we decided to put in an application, which is before you today, to simply replace the existing old billboard with a new structure, but not have a digital billboard. And in that case, I think planning, again, is misinterpreting it because they said, and the previous zoning board said, that that section of removing 3 billboard only applies to new digital billboards.
And you're not seeking to add
We're not seeking to do it. Now, if the Utah Street case comes back and is reversed, or the city council changes the zoning code to remove that replacement requirement, then we might come back in the future. But for now, we want to replace the existing old structure on the Western Avenue site and build a new single-faced traditional sign, same size, height, location.
Static.
Yeah,
is the
static,
term,
static.
As opposed to digital.
And again, I think goes through the conditional use standards. I think this is right off of I-95. The board's previously approved a replacement of a double-face sign with a V-shaped sign, the same property. We think there's no impact on any. It's an industrial area and certainly meets the conditional use standards, same location, height, and illumination.
So, Mr. Barry, the original appeal that was filed says replace existing billboard with new 14-foot by 48-foot billboard structure with one LED face, dimensions to remain the same. Are you amending that to
Yes.
take away the LED portion?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're formally amending it to get rid of the LED?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Planning Department would have no objection if that LED component is removed from this appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frey.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions?
No, I think that's all we have, unless you
Okay.
have any more.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jim.
very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next case to be called is 2018-440, 907 South Conkling Street. Fred Federico.
All right, move stuff. This is Western.
So I haven't seen him.
Ah,
Federico.
okay. Maybe we'll skip him.
40.
I can go to the next one.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, do we have the authority to dismiss this case? We're having some issues with folks not appearing for appeal hearings, and, once, twice, 3, 4 times is one thing, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th time is another. So if there's a problem, if someone's broken down the road, we obviously understand that. But if someone just forgot to show up for their hearing, I would request the board's authority to dismiss the case.
How many times has this been postponed?
This particular case has not been postponed, but the particular applicant has missed a number of hearings.
Authorization granted.
What's the next one then?
Yep, we'll move on to case number 2018, I'm sorry, and so that matter 2018-440, 907 South Conkling Street is dismissed. Next matter, appeal is 2018-441, 2216 Bank Street. Brandon
Don't even try
Boniatu?
it. I don't know. I can't say it either, but I'm not him.
Boniatu,
Let's
give it a
just
shot.
skip it to the Lisa Junker part where
So this
it's
is
much easier.
a request to remove, replace, and expand portion of first floor rear addition and construct new second floor rear addition with rooftop deck. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, and your name, ma'am?
My name is Lisa Junker. I've been asked to step in as he is not able to get here, and he didn't want to be dismissed.
Very well. Okay, do we have any staff reports for this matter?
441.
I'm sorry, 2018-441.
Have you been sworn in, Ms.
Oh, no.
Junker?
We want to do that first?
Not today.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Planning Department reviewed the application and has no comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just tell us about your project, ma'am.
Okay, so it's kind of a remove and replace and expand. So it's an existing row home in the Fells Point area, kind of borders Fells Point Prospect area. Communications were made between the property owner and the associations via phone call when I directed him to do that a couple weeks ago. There is an existing, if you look on sheet A3, I don't know if you're on it, you can kind of see the perimeters of each of the floors noted as brick. And then with the first floor, there's a small rear projection that is being removed and replaced.
Okay.
Okay, and then the second floor, if you shoot over to the right, you'll see the same kind of rear brick point, and then everything past it is a full addition. Okay, so it'll be partially over the existing to be replaced rear addition, but then a small portion of it will be cantilevered to make the second floor slightly larger for bedroom living area, as well as a staircase and then a rooftop deck on top of that portion.
So it looks like according to the plans,
Still on E3?
this goes to 92% lot coverage? About that?
Well, aerial-wise, but not land-wise. So we're not increasing the impervious, because we're just removing and replacing the first floor addition. And the second floor is cantilevered when it extends outside the first floor footprint. So yes, so there'll be, yes, it's about, give or take, it's about that much. But again, the impervious part is not increasing.
All right. Want to have any questions?
No.
No.
Anything else you'd like to add, ma'am?
Not that I can think of, thank you.
Okay,
Ms.
very
Junker?
well.
Yes.
In the rear of this property, is there a public alleyway or any kind of access out to the rear of the property, if you're aware?
There is a 3-foot alley, plus or minus, as shown on sheet A1.
So obviously a car can't get down a 3-foot alley, so
Yeah.
they're essentially blocked in by the properties to the
Yes.
rear.
The land configuration in and of itself prohibits the rear access.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you still vote at the end? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Calling the next case, 2018-442, 3401 Woodbrook Avenue, Bernard Witherspoon.
Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I do. You're Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Witherspoon.
Good afternoon.
We have this matter, it's a request to use as 4 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property was originally constructed as a multifamily dwelling. It was approved for use as 4 dwelling units beginning in 1957. The department is recommending approval of the application as it will continue existing use of the property. Thank you.
Mr. Witherspoon, could you just tell us about your project?
Pardon me?
Could you just tell us about your project?
Yes, well, really, we just went in and because it was, like I said, it was originally like 4, but the basement was kitchen and everything, bedroom, and also what we did, we went in, just removed like the sheetrock and stuff, got permission to move the little sheetrock on it, and we were using it as just a storage room. And then we turned around and just put everything back, the kitchen, everything, all this stuff was there.
Okay.
So we just went on and just renovated it.
Is it separately metered for the units?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And sir, there was a permit issued, or it looks like applied for in 2017 to reduce occupancy from 4 dwelling units to 3 dwelling units. Were you the owner of the property
Yes,
at that
we were the
time?
owners of the property at the time, but it was a leasing representative that was leasing for us, and we terminated him because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. And how that occurred, I don't know, because we were just using, like I said, as putting like work tools and stuff like that in temporarily.
You weren't working to formally convert it to just a 3-unit with storage room. You wanted,
Right, but we was going to just put it right back because it was already just a regular living quarters, but like, I said, we just moved sheetrock and stuff like that, and just turned it back into the apartment, and took our tools and stuff and stored them in the garage.
okay. All right. Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
So what's the outcome of this?
Well, we will rule at, we will
Oh,
make a decision
okay.
at the end of the hearing.
All right, then.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you very much, sir.
All right. Calling the next case, 2018-443, 3801 Glen Avenue, Tikra Pickett.
They spelled my name wrong, but yes.
How is it spelled, ma'am?
Tikva with a V instead of an R.
Ah, got it.
I think on the paper, V could look like an R.
Okay. Good to swear the witness.
I do swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay, Ms. Pickett, we have this at 3801 Glen Avenue, a request to use portion of premises as a 12-child daycare center. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted its primary concern would be that this property is at the corner of Glen Avenue and Gist Avenue, and there is at the present time no specific place designated for safe drop-off or pickup of children. The department is therefore recommending approval of the application, subject to the condition that the applicant request consideration for establishment of a passenger loading zone on either Glen Avenue or Gist Avenue by the Parking Authority of Baltimore City. Thank you.
Excuse me. Do I answer him? Can I answer him first?
Well, you can speak to us.
Yeah,
Can you tell us about it in
I already
relation to that?
applied for that, and they said that as long as my license goes through, because I want it to be a licensed daycare center,
Yes, ma'am.
that they would approve the loading zone on the side. But they won't approve it until I have the license.
Right.
Can't be licensed until I get approval from the zoning board.
Okay.
So it's a circle.
So you accept that condition
Yes.
of the approved loading and all? Okay,
Yes.
very well. Any questions?
Derek,
Yes, sir?
what type of follow-up is done to ensure that, in this case, the loading zone is actually put in place?
So typically for a daycare center, it's at the discretion of the parking authority and the property owner or the tenant as to whether a passenger loading zone would be appropriate. So it's not necessarily a condition that they get that passenger loading zone. It's merely a referral to the parking authority that they inquire about it. But any condition that the board puts on a particular decision attaches to the board's decision. And then when it flows through that permit process, theoretically, any agency about to issue that permit should be reviewing that condition to make sure that if there was a requirement to go to DOT or parking authority or health department, whatever it might be, that specific agency would catch that condition, essentially.
And you have faith in that process?
Yes, I do.
That's a good question.
So do we. Okay. But you're in agreement that an appropriate passenger
Yes.
loading and unloading zone is appropriate for this particular site?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to put out there, in our community, in Baltimore City specifically, there is a need for safe licensed daycares. I am in the process of being licensed for 8 children, which is an in-family, and I'm requesting 4 more children, which makes me a large family, which is considered a center, but it's not really a center, but it's a center. And I have all the qualifications ready. The only thing that we're waiting for is this.
Okay. Well, very well.
What experience do you have with childcare? I've been doing I'm 33 officially, and I have been doing childcare for 10 years. I have a bachelor's degree in a teaching certificate, and I've done my 90 hours and 45-hour infant and toddler, and all, I've done Project Security Blanket and SIDS training and everything that's required. I also in the process of becoming a car seat technician, because I feel like daycare providers are more than just like pick up and drop off and take care of the kid. Like, we need to know if a kid is coming safe and happy and in a proper car seat and things like that. So there's a move from within the religious community for all of the non-licensed daycares to license. So I'm the first. Thank you.
The city of Baltimore appreciates the licensure.
Thank you. We're working with, I just started working with Center for Jewish Education to help all these people who are watching children unlicensed to come forward and license before they're shut down or before something happens. So,
Definitely appreciate that.
trying to do that.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
Do you want to see the documents that I gave in for the loading zone? Like that, I have the application.
You want to make it part of the record.
Is that
If you
helpful?
have it with you. It's
Yeah.
not,
I bought everything.
certainly add it to the record if you like.
And I have copies of it, so you could keep it.
It's okay, just submit one.
What?
Just submit the one.
Here's the application and the affidavit, and the response, which basically says that I need to be licensed first.
Very well. All right, we'll make it part of the record.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next case to be called is 2018 sorry, let me back that up. Consent.
5-4.
Yeah, 454, all right. 2018-454, 2001 through 2009 North Charles Street. Robert Burgunder. We could have the, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could have your
Witness sworn, please.
be sworn.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay, Mr. Burgunder, we have this at the location to construct new 5-story mixed-use 44 dwelling units with first floor, 10,000 square feet of retail goods establishment.
Yes.
Accurate?
And I'll
All
defer to Mr. French for the
All right, Mr.
Planning
French?
Department's report.
Staff reports.
Okay. First, we have a letter from Charles North that indicate they support this request. Further, that in the past, they have supported similar requests, particularly for the parking variance, as the community is a home to a great many students from surrounding universities, and that most of the residents tend to commute with the train to DC. Therefore, they don't use cars.
Planning Department has reviewed this app.
Who was that?
Community Association.
Charles Village?
Charles North.
Charles North, okay.
Planning Department has reviewed this application, is recommending approval of the application subject to the condition that the applicant use the site plan review process to incorporate a reasonable amount of off-street parking in the proposed building design, and that the proposed structure is then completed in accordance with the plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Gunder, are those conditions acceptable to you
Yes,
tonight?
they are. If I could, just by way of introduction, a bit of a proffer. This is the an aerial view of the neighborhood. I think most of you are familiar with the Charles North area. So this is Charles Street and North Avenue. So North Avenue running sideways across the page. Charles Street running up to the center. This actually will be the first new multifamily apartment building at market rates with ground floor retail in this neighborhood, probably since this very tall building was built. This is the largest single concentration of subsidized housing in Baltimore City. It was built in 1973. So my guess is at least since 1973, this will be the first apartment building built in the neighborhood. It's a particular concept. I have with me Paul Yu, who's a member of 2001 North Charles LLC, the representative of the developer here to answer questions about it. It's a bit of a unique concept called Wheelhouse, and I'd like him to say a few things about the concept and what they're planning for this property and how they've worked with the neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you.
So the concept we have here at the Wheelhouse, this is technically Wheelhouse number 2. The first Wheelhouse we have in construction over in Fed Hill.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, looks great.
So same type of concept. It's going to be 44 units, ground level retail. And what's unique about this site and the property that we're looking at, it's on a busy one-way road up North Charles heading out of the city. And it's also, it used to be an old gas station. So in terms of developing, we might run into
Some environmental issues.
underground storage tanks possibly. But we're willing to look into that and find a means.
That's great.
Okay, and so the concept is that the folks who would live there would get a bicycle, is that?
Sure. So the same concept that we have at Wheelhouse 1 with the parking that we're trying to get the variance lowered in, all residents will be getting a bike for their use with the lease.
Would that be a bike locker or a locked space?
There'll be stations set up where they can lock it up, but that's still under design.
Is there a problem with street parking there now?
No, there's not.
I was going to say, like, I don't.
There's lots of parking lots
Yeah.
available nearby for people who come to work there. The two significant developments that have happened in the neighborhood, and we're glad to add to that, the first multifamily use is the renovation of the Center Theater, which is now a nonprofit. It includes Sparky Pants, the tech company, and then also the Central Baltimore Partnership is also in that building. So just nearby, I can show you where that has been renovated. So people are starting to come back. This building here was the old Center Theater, which got renovated, and then actually can't see in the picture, but on this corner here is the new renovated theater.
For the
Parkway
Film Festival.
Yeah, where the Franz Marek Center is for Johns Hopkins. So there's starting to be some positive development in the neighborhood. We're proud to be the first and excited to be the first residential development in this neighborhood that has not seen any residential development. That's why Charles North was willing to support us in seeking the variance. And basically, as Mr. Yu said, the property is a bit unique in that it's on the one-way street with limited access on 20th Street. And the concept would be to maximize the number of people who could live there, which is what the neighborhood wants, what the master plan requires, and what the master plan encourages, and to put some ground floor retail. So it's also going to be the first new ground floor retail in the neighborhood in many, many years, although there are some restaurants nearby. And so the idea would be to maximize the use of the property without having to go real tall on the property. So that's what we would seek to do.
Very well.
Are there other questions?
Any
that the
questions?
board has
Good
for us?
project.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
your
you very
presentation.
Yep, thank you.
It's a good project.
Yeah. Okay, going to call the next case of 2018-458, 938 North Broadway. Mr. Pruddle or Mr. Berry?
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Berry, we have this 930 North Broadway to construct rear addition and use premises as 3 dwelling units.
That's correct.
Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is contained within an urban renewal area known as the Gay Street 1 urban renewal area. There are specific requirements concerning the exterior of the structure that may be imposed by the design guidelines in that particular urban renewal plan. The department recommends approval of the application, subject to the condition that all additions and alterations to the existing structure are completed in accordance with the design guidelines contained in the Gay Street 1 urban renewal plan and as approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Berry, are those conditions acceptable?
Yes, they are.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about your project?
Well, this is I don't know if you've had your Google Maps brought up, but the reason we had to, applicants proposing to construct a rear addition is to replace a prior portion of the building that extended all the way to the alley. It's the only property on that block that extended to the alley, and I'll get to that in a second, but all the others, if you look at your, have essentially rear yards and small rear additions. This was a corner property that basically took up 100% of the lot. And it was in bad condition. The city basically issued a violation notice, I believe, and he tore down the rear addition, asked to come to the board to replace it, and then put in essentially one apartment per floor. So the apartments are quite generous. They're one-bedroom apartments, over 800 square feet in size, a couple hundred square feet sometimes over what you would see in a one-bedroom apartment. There's no place to put parking on site, so parking would have to be either on site if there is even a need for parking. So we would need a variance from the zoning board. We'd also need the variance, which sounds like a large amount, except that the property is permitted to have 2 dwelling units. So to go to one additional, while it may sound like a large increase, 36% or so, it really doesn't really impact the request, and certainly one dwelling unit per floor is normal for the board and for this neighborhood to consider. It is right across the street, essentially, from Kennedy Krieger and Hopkins, so there's certainly a market for these types of units, and we would ask the board to approve it. I would say that one reason for the lot size, going back in history, is that if you look at your Google Maps, right behind it is a housing development that was subsidized and built in the 1960s, I believe, under the Gay Street 1 urban renewal plan. And at that point, properties were rearranged. The new alley was put in, perhaps shortening this lot size in and of itself. So all the other blocks up and down Broadway to the north or to the south have much deeper yards and have been approved for 3 or 4 units when they've come before the board.
Very good.
What's going on with all the glass on the first floor? Is that like an entrance, or?
Pardon?
The glass on the first floor.
It would be part of the entrance.
Entrance.
Any questions?
Nope.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Appreciate it. And is that the docket?
Looks like it.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
formally off the record.
Yes, sir.